Get informed on the latest happenings. KBC Channel 1.
Wow! Wow! Yeah!
We are the full package.
Oh, yes.
And Kenya's watching.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Are you a talented artist? Or are you passionate about a topic you want to discuss? But money can be very hard to find for an upcoming artist. Don't worry, Studio Mashinani has got your back. Sign up on ajira.co.ke to book a session with your music and video producers across the country. Work on your music, jingles, spoken words, and even podcasts to realize your dream. All for free. Studio Mashinani, Radani Talent.
Good morning and a warm welcome to KBC News Check, the day being the 21st day of May 2024. My name is Bentro Njue and my colleague Lucy Mwaura will be handling the sign language interpretation for this live news program. Because we'll be looking at the current happening in the country and beyond. We know a number of activities have been taking place, the latest one being the presidential state visit to the United States of America. We are also keeping tabs with the ongoings in the Finance Bill 2024, which has elicited mixed reactions. We will be dissecting that as well, and also we'll be looking at the politics of the day. So welcome. On social media at Bentro Njue, at KBC Channel 1. We are also live on all our other social media spaces, including YouTube, Twitter, and also we are also live on our website, that is www.kbc.co.ke. Let's begin with the president's itinerary in the United States. He arrived yesterday, Monday the 20th. And if my director, we can have those slides. We have the visit to the Carter Presidential Library and Museum to emphasize the two countries' shared commitment to governance, democratic values, and anti-corruption efforts. Atlanta visit, today actually. Visit Spelman College to emphasize on the critical role of higher education, particularly in science and technology, which is quite critical in attracting investment. And we have seen the number, according to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics report yesterday, is the number of enrollment in the last 1 year has greatly improved. The president also is going to be visiting Tyler Perry's studio. You know this gentleman because of the Madea series and other BET productions, to explore opportunities within the creative economy, and also head to the Coca-Cola company to forge new investments. Also, he's going to launch Vivo's inaugural store. A number of US companies have also set up shop in the country, and this is one of the best opportunities to ensure that we rope in all these investors for better prosperity. An economy grew by about 5%, that is the GDP. Also on the president's to-do list is to attend a dinner hosted by the state's mayor, Andre Dickens. That is going to be taking place later on today. Remember, the United States timings mostly about 8 hours. Compared to Kenya, East Africa time. Other than that, he's going to be going to the Andrews Air Force Base, that is tomorrow, where he will be accorded full ceremonial state honors. That will be happening in Washington, D.C. And just a quick one, his visit started out in Atlanta, Georgia. Other than that, tomorrow he also have extensive engagements at the Hill, where he will meet a bipartisan congressional delegation under the chairmanship of the Speaker of the House, meet with the Black Congressional Caucus, and hold discussions with the bipartisan caucus of the Senate. It's important to note that the president, there was a request for the head of state to address both houses in the United States, but because of the timing schedule, that will not be happening. But other than that, he will be laying a wreath at the Arlington Cemetery to honor dead American soldiers and historic figures such as Thurgood Marshall and John F. Kennedy, who have a profound impact on Kenya's history. That will be taking place this Thursday. Remember, it's a one-week tour of the United States of America. Other than that, the president will have main bilateral meeting with the host of president, delving deeper into Kenya-US economic, health and security partnership and discussions surrounding regional development on the continent. Remember, 60 years of prosperity, 60 years of partnership in various sectors, including trade, also expected to rope in a number of deals. On Thursday, the head of state will deliver a keynote address on shared climate solutions at the Smithsonian, discussing global environmental challenges and collaborative approaches to addressing them. You know very well the head of state was very instrumental in the Africa Climate Summit that took place right here in the country sometimes back last year. That will also be keeping tabs with how that unfolds. On Thursday, he is expected to have a state dinner at the White House, celebrating the enduring friendship between Kenya and the United States. As I had mentioned earlier, 60 years of partnerships. Remember, this is the third presidential visit by a Kenyan head of state, official visit. The first one being in 1980 by President Moi, the second one being in 2003 by President Mwai Kibaki, and now we are having one by President William Ruto. On Friday, his entree includes strategic engagements focusing on trade, investment, and digital cooperation. The events include a number of host activities, including meeting with the Kenya diaspora, who have been remitting billions in Kenya shillings from the United States. On Friday, we'll have a breakfast meeting at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, where the head of state will make the case for Kenya as a prime destination for U.S. investments in a number of sectors, including tourism. Remember the visa-free? We'll be talking about that a little bit later on. A digital roundtable discussion hosted by Vice President Kamala Harris will be taking place on Friday in Washington, D.C. Same day, we will be visiting the Pentagon, which is the chief defense strategy body of the United States, where he will be highlighting the key Kenya-US defense partnership. We have seen numerous Kenya-US defense partnership in the fight against terrorism. We've seen against extremism and other emerging threats, including cyber security. And talking about security, you do remember Kenya is sending a host of Kenya Police servicemen to ensure that Haiti has peace. But that we'll also be discussing a little bit later. You also, on Friday, visit to the Pentagon will also culminate into a number of security discussions that the head of state will be engaging a number of stakeholders in that circle or in that sphere as well. More or less, that will be forming basis of what we'll be discussing today, and also we will be looking at the finance bill, which has elicited a mixed reaction, as I mentioned earlier on. And a number of MPs are in Mombasa, just trying to finalize some of the aspects that are contained in the budget policy statement that was released a couple of days, weeks ago, and has elicited mixed reactions. That will be forming basis of our discussion. And allow me to introduce my first guest. Oscar Omondi. Oscar Omondi is a political scientist. He is also a lecturer at one of the universities right here in the country. Oscar Omondi, Brock, welcome.
Thank you very much, Troy, for having me. It's been long.
Yeah, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Took a couple of days off, and I'm also fixing a few things at home. Also
nice.
feels good to be back.
Yeah, I mean, you get the psychological revamping and restructuring afresh again. I mean, discussing the same things all the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes can wear you down.
Very true.
Thank you very much, Troy.
Welcome, welcome. I'm looking at the president's speech. I'm hoping that we will be able to get exactly what the president said yesterday, because he did issue a statement yesterday in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that we'll be able to get that video before we wrap up, so that we may have a feel of exactly what was happening, because in the United States it was about, here in Kenya it was about 12 a.m.
Yeah, we have a long hour difference.
Yes, around 8 hours, right?
Yes.
All right. What do you make of the president visitor? From the records, we are hearing that the last one that was hosted, official visit, state visit by a president, was in 2009 when the then president, George W. Bush, hosted Ghana's president, John Kufuor.
Yeah.
And this is a third for a Kenyan visiting head of state for an official state visit.
It is a historic visit.
Yeah.
One thing, I mean, where Kenya stands, especially in terms of security, you know that one of the things that have messed up our security and our developmental agendas is terrorism. And there's no country in the world that you can have a bilateral agreement to deal with things like terrorism. So this one is an historical visit that the president have. But again, you have to know that America, United States of America, will be going to the elections later in the year, and policies might change. So it will be important for the president to build the gains that we want to build today, because sometimes when, you know, Donald Trump is also going for the presidency, and the opinion polls that are there between Biden and Trump are too close to call. So we don't know whatever action will be taken in November by American citizens in terms of voting. So if we can gain something very fast from the Biden administration before it closes shop, it will be important to get it. If we can get some documents passed in terms of business, in terms of the incentives that we need to get in the fight against terrorism. For me, mostly it is about security, about terrorism. And you know what Kenya went through when we had these terror attacks all over here. And mostly the terrorists normally target the international community or the American governments, but not inside the homeland. Mostly they target them outside. And Kenya has been prone to that, you know, the Westgate attack, the Lucid attack, and all this, and the 1998 bomb attack. And these attacks are counterproductive to our tourism, which has been sponsoring, which has been doing so well in our GDP. I mean, when we had no terrorism and COVID, 16% of our GDP was being funded by tourism. So without security, and when terrorists attack our naval point of tourism, then it becomes a problem. We've not yet completely dealt away with terrorism. You know, places like Lamu, for example, there have been a lot of attacks around that area.
Yeah, and Boni Forest as well.
And Boni Forest. So we still need, and you know, intelligence sharing is the most important thing, knowing how the threats that when the threats are coming, you cannot deal with it when they're already here. You know, places like, I'm told, a place like New York, they get almost around 100 terror threats per day. But they manage to deal with it. So we need that intelligence report so that we keep our air safe, we keep our airport safe, we keep our region safe. And we can't do it.
All right. And of course, the United States has a lot of interest in the country, spanning in so many sectors, but we will be looking at that. And my director, Mugo Kariuki, informs me that indeed we do have that speech that the head of state did make yesterday. Of course, it was a little bit late here in the country, so it wasn't able to run in our news segment. But let's first of all hear what the head of state had to say in Atlanta, Georgia yesterday.
Mr. Jason Carter, Chair of the Center of the Carter Center Board, Dr. Paige Alexander, CEO, Cheta Center, Dr. Meredith Evans, Director of the Carter Presidential Library and Museum, Congresswoman Kima Williams, thank you very much for welcoming me. Our ambassador from Kenya to the United States, or is it the United States to Kenya, Ambassador Meg Whitman. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is indeed a great privilege for me to be here today at this iconic center, a hub of noble endeavors and a fitting tribute to the global legacy of a distinguished American leader and humanitarian. I thank the leadership of this center for hosting and providing me with a unique opportunity to honor an exemplary American whose commitment to leadership, governance, democracy, and human welfare has made him a respected global citizen. His political career may have concluded, but his influence as a leader endures. As President Jimmy Carter turns 100 years this October, I wish him good health and happiness. My visit here reminds me of the first state visit by a Kenyan leader to the US in the 1980s, when President Carter invited President Moi to America. President Carter continues his engagement with Kenya through his work at this center, where he remains a respected global advocate, especially for victims of overlooked conflict and humanitarian crisis. President Carter and his legacy and the efforts of this center are vividly alive in Kenya. In 1994, for example, with substantial support from the center, Kenya became one of the first countries to stop the transmission of guinea worm disease. And we thank this center immensely. Today, Kenya stands as a more confident democracy, thanks in part to President Carter's personal support and the center's institutional contribution. This center is founded on a deep commitment to human rights and alleviation of human suffering. Its impactful work has improved millions of lives worldwide by contributing to conflict resolution, promoting democracy, democratic norms, building an accountable institutions, and supporting disease prevention. The commitment of this center reflects our own values and governance principles, highlighting the common heritage that the United States and Kenya in our strategic partnership of shared objectives centered on human well-being, security, and dignity. The historic events which define the essential character of Kenya and the United States of America as proud, free, and democratic nations, though centuries apart, are very identical. Kenya is as good as the United States. At the height of Kenya's liberation struggle, the US, a global democratic giant, became a natural ally of our freedom fighters. Our independence benefited from the loyal support of celebrated American progressive leaders and iconic civil rights champions. The legacy of this early partnership was evident in the contribution of American jurist Thurgood Marshall, who hopefully I will see the place of his remains tomorrow, who helped in the writing of our first constitution and continues to define our political culture of debate, negotiations, and compromise, helping us navigate challenges and make necessary progress as a country. This collaboration also sowed the mustard seed of people-to-people collaboration in the form of the historic Student Airlift Program, initiated by President J.F. Kennedy, a program which enabled hundreds of young Kenyans to pursue higher education in US colleges and universities, equipping our new independent nation with a cadre of well-educated and skilled leaders. These strategic and thoughtful interventions reflected our shared values and empowered our young nation to stand confidently on its own and forge a path that we celebrate even today. Let me say this. Tomorrow, we expand this historic collaboration with 5 Kenyan universities signing a student exchange program with their American counterparts to celebrate our shared progress and broaden the knowledge horizon and experience of both Kenyan and American students. We have never looked back, neither in our determined quest to implement ambitious development programs, nor in our commitment to our partnership. We continue on a path of an open society, strongly committed to greater accountability and transparency, with robust engagement of civil society organizations who serve as a catalyst for societal progress, amplifying the voice of the people and ensuring their active participation in governance. As a fundamental component and watchdog of our civic space, the media in Kenya, both national and international, ensures that our informed citizenry is the backbone of our democracy, driving development and supporting open government. Recognizing that accountability and integrity are essential for enhancing democratic governance, the fight against corruption is a fundamental imperative. With the support of our partners, we continue to strengthen our entire criminal justice system, including investigations, prosecutions, and judicial processes. We are also enhancing all capabilities, human, financial, operational, and technical, including hiring a record 46 judges in the last 1.5 years. It is crucial to view these developments as the natural consequences of our constitutional framework, which establishes a representative democracy, mandates the separation of powers, enforces checks and balances, and prevents any single branch from acquiring absolute power. Additionally, it enshrines fundamental rights and freedoms, empowers citizens to actively participate in processes that affect their interests, and safeguards the freedom of expression and assembly. Our Constitution also safeguards equality, inclusion, and affirmative action for women, the marginalized, and minorities. It requires the state to support citizens in realizing their full potential and transforms expectations around social services and attendant opportunities into fundamental rights, while demanding a responsive and accountable government as both a state obligation and also a citizen's right. Since the people of Kenya are the ultimate holders of all sovereign power, leaders like myself and many seated here have an irrevocable covenant to return to the ballot every 5 years, to renew their social contract with the citizens. We celebrate the right of every Kenyan to choose their political representatives and participate in public decisions as a fundamental principle of democratic governance. In fact, I'll give you an example. In the last election, it was particularly very interesting. There was a narrative that had been weaved that the elections will be decided by something called the deep state and the system. But believe you me, if the deep state was to decide or the system was to decide, a different person would be standing before you today as President of Kenya. It is the people of Kenya who decided. Over time, our Election Management Commission has gained significant capacity and legitimacy as an impartial arbiter, steadily building voter confidence. Transparent election processes, including the use of electronic systems for voter registration, election validation, and results transmission, ensure the integrity of our elections, making every vote count and every voice to be heard. We are ready to share our experiences in this space. even with the United States. To further ensure electoral integrity, a comprehensive and predictable constitutional framework exists for election dispute resolution. Notably, the Supreme Court has resolved presidential election disputes 4 times, including annulment of the 2017 election, in which I was a candidate. I tell you, it's not good when your election is annulled, but it is democracy, and we choose to respect. It is quite fitting that I delved into a detailed examination of the evolution of our country's electoral institutions and democratic credentials, given that 2024 is an unprecedented year for democracy. This year, nearly 2 billion voters in 90 countries, including the United States and 18 African nations, will go to the polls. Importantly, this robust democratic engagement counters a growing, not so true wave of narrow nationalism, intolerance, targeting of minorities, violent political contests, and other anti-democratic tendencies. In several countries, we have seen unconstitutional changes of government that have threatened democratic gains. Consequently, this is for reflecting on the need to strengthen democracy worldwide. Many countries are in economic and debt distress occasioned by climate change and compounded by an unjust international financial architecture and also an imperfect multilateralism. We now run the escalating risk of democracy and free markets being associated with poverty and suffering, lending credence to the widespread lamentation that democracy is or has been on the retreat in many parts of the world, including Africa. Later this week, I will have the privilege to engage with members of the American Congress, and I'm happy one of them is here, to make a case for many countries in Africa, including Kenya, seeking a just international financial architecture that will afford every developing country concessionary development financing to support our economies, build resilience against the effects of climate change, drive our belief in free market economy, and energize our democratic enterprise. Kenya hosted the World Bank's IDA 21 Replacement Summit 3 weeks ago, bringing together the African continent and the World Bank to urge our development partners, led by our friends, the United States of America, to enhance their contribution to the concessional window of the World Bank so that we can support developing countries. I believe the United States of America has a historic opportunity to lead the free world in dealing with this economic situation and give meaning to democracy and free market economy worldwide, including in Kenya and many other developing countries. Needless to say, it is a busy period for the Carter Center, and I'm deeply grateful to Dr. Paige Alexander and her team for their effort and patience in organizing this event for me. As we strengthen our democratic values, we recognize their alignment with shared aspirations of humanity. Like the United States, we believe that the fulfillment of Kenya's destiny is inseparably intertwined with the overall well-being of humanity. In this context, Kenya has been and will in the search for sustainable solutions to regional and global challenges. The war in Ukraine, the conflicts in the Middle East, the fighting in Sudan, South Sudan, Eastern DRC, the Sahel, and terrorism in Somalia all demand greater collaboration and strategic global leadership. Kenya is leading the institutional reform of the African Union to enhance its role in economic development, peace and security, and stability across Africa, and foster infrastructure development. The United States of America has a significant opportunity to collaborate with Kenya and the broader African continent in building the institutional capabilities necessary for economic prosperity, peace and security for the 1.4 billion people living in Africa. Kenya has always stood as a pillar of shared values, offering refuge and hope to many fleeing persecution and humanitarian crisis. Through strong partnership with countries like the US, we are actively fighting global terrorism, violent extremism, and transnational crimes such as piracy, human trafficking, and drug trafficking, significantly contributing to a safer and freer world. As the climate crisis poses an existential threat to all life on Earth, Kenya has taken a leading role in defining this challenge and mobilizing a global response that matches the scale and urgency needed to restore ecological balance and secure our planet. Finally, we are at the forefront of forging regional and global cooperation, which has expanded our role in pursuing sustainable peace, both regionally and internationally. Since independence, Kenya has participated in 49 peace support missions worldwide. Following UN Security Council Resolution 2699 of 2023, we are leading the multinational security support mission, driven by our firm belief that the responsibility to support Haiti lies with all nations and peoples who value self-determination, freedom, peace, and democracy. The enduring legacy of President Jimmy Carter illustrates the profound impact an individual can have on history and the advancement of democracy and justice, reflecting on President Carter's commitment to a freer, safer, healthier, and more just world. We are called to honor his contribution to humanitarianism and solidarity, and his steadfast advocacy for the well-being of individuals and the creation of inclusive, equitable, and just societies. In today's complex global landscape, it is crucial to reaffirm and resolutely uphold timeless principles of democracy and freedom. We look forward to enhancing our partnership with the United States of America and the Carter Center to build a stronger Kenya. For this reason, I anticipate a continued and expanded partnership with the Carter Center to strengthen our democracy, enhance our capabilities in ensuring human security, and foster prosperity among all peoples. I thank you.
A standing ovation for President Dr. William Ruto there at the Jimmy Carter Presidential Library and Museum, where he made his first speech. And the bulk of the speech, as you've heard it, has touched on matters democracy, shared governance, democratic values, and anti-corruption efforts, not forgetting the climate mitigation factors to ensure we have we maintain a balanced ecological system in the country. Remember, as I had mentioned earlier, is that the president did spearhead the first Africa Climate Summit last year, and is still on course to ensure that we do a lot in regards to climate matters for the 1.4 billion people in the continent, as he has rightfully mentioned. And just without diluting his speech, I'm just mentioning some of the pillars that he has mentioned in terms of peace. We have had 49 peace missions. Kenya has led in 49 peace missions, not forgetting the one that we are spearheading in the country, Haiti, to ensure we have peace and democracy. Another thing that he has been quite passionate about, other than the climate, is the economic prosperity for the 1.4 billion people, affirming that the government is indeed committed to ensure that it uplifts the living standards of Kenyans and the region as well. And in matters democracy, rule of law, as mentioned, that 46 judges have been sworn in the last 1 year, just to underscore his commitment to ensure access to justice and democracy in the country. And allow me now to rope in my panel of experts. We are now joined by Ishmael Nyaribo. Ishmael Nyaribo is an advocate of the High Court and also a leading public policy analyst. Karibu sana, wakili.
Thank you, Bontre. Thank you.
Yeah, but let me have a feel of you gentlemen in regards to the first speech that the president has had from the standing ovation. Shows that he has touched some souls and lives as well.
Yeah, you know, for God and for the country, I think that's one of the best speech you can make in an international podium. Mm-hmm. Because, you see, Kenya also has a policy on foreign relations, and he's touched on peace, which is in harmony with the Kenyan policy on foreign affairs. He's touched on economic affairs, which again, economic prosperity, which is part of our policy. He's also talked about, environmental, stability. He's talked about security in the East African region, which again is part of the Kenya's policy in terms of foreign relations. Mm-hmm. So that's good. I think that we must maintain our analysis at the upper cut, at the level, at the international level at which it is, so that we do not mix the local and internal politics. Mm-hmm. In terms of what the head of state has said in Carter's mausoleum, I think that is one of the best speech. Yes, and I think if Kenyan institutions and the leaders who have been elected and appointed by the head of state to assist him, if they can pursue that line of thought, look at the way the president is actually capturing all items of his speech without reading, from nowhere. I mean, it means that he has the passion. He has what he's talking about really, embedded to his vision, to his persona. Mm-hmm. You don't see that in many of our leaders, but like I say, we will reserve that. We will, keep that aside for our local bickering. But in terms of what the head of state has gone to portray in the U.S., I think that's one of the best speech. Mm. Yep.
Let me go back to you, Oscar. The speech, we were just touching on what we do expect the head of state to be doing today, tomorrow, and the coming days. But in his speech, as you've listened to it, what were your take-homes?
One, I want to talk about the podium the president is using. The president is at Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter is celebrating 100 years in October, and Jimmy Carter was a former president. That means that since Jimmy Carter left office, will be more than 20 years down the line. But still, whatever experience of being a president of the United States of America is still exemplified in his work after leaving office, after retirement. Mm. I think one of the things we should be able to do, I was thinking about, what about if we create a Kibaki Center, where we see what Kibaki used to do when he was president, what he stood for, and young generations can go there and maybe see what happened during his tenure. Again, Uhuru Kenyatta was president. Whatever he did, he should not just be left that with that experience, I think now, Uhuru not being president now, he's more experienced to guide as opposed to when he's in position. President Moi was in power in Kenya for 24 years. The generation, the historical thing, the young people, the historians need to write something about. Using only, if we have President Daniel Arap Moi Library, for example, to know what he did. So it is important because some of these things, in America, we even have Abraham Lincoln Library, where we know what Lincoln did. That is almost more than 100 years ago. Now, whatever the president, just as my colleague has talked about, this is a very well decorated speech, which is good at the international stature. He managed to talk of climate change, and we need to deal with climate change because it's affecting us in Africa so much. One of the things that I expected, and I expected him to talk about, is climate change compensation. I mean, the floods that we're experiencing here, the international community, the American, the people who are emitting to, who are contributing majorly to global warming, should be able to be put to task to compensate, because we've lost lives here. The floods, we've lost livelihoods, we've lost a lot of things. When he goes outside there, tell those guys, look, you have to compensate because you are emitting. Another thing that he has talked about is about global challenges, things like the Ukraine war and the Sudan war and Somalia terrorism. And I told you before we started that terrorism is a big thing for me. As he goes to the United States, he needs to hit it hard because we are not off the hook yet, but you can only depend on American systems currently to deal with terrorism. And the other issue is, I think I would have, if I was the people who did the speech, could have probably omitted the part of the elections and how we are. Yeah, I mean, just let's do that.
But at the end of the day, he's talking about also the rule of law and also democracy. And democracy, you can't talk about democracy without talking about elections.
I mean, it is good, but you see this platform again, I mean, what Nyaribu is talking about, that let us not bring our internal issues to the international level. I'm saying it's a very, very good speech, well-decorated speech. Something could have been omitted, like he said that, you know, if it was not for a good election that we did, somebody else would have been standing here now, you know. I mean, just do it away.
Away from that.
You know, he actually talked about, you know, some people built a narrative. That the deep state and all that. I think that's why I was saying we should leave some of the issues for internal bickering, because he also actually carried a very much local and internal issue to the US. I think I do not know why they actually had to bring it up at the international forum, because for example, if people still believe that the Kenyan electoral system was manipulated by elites and institutions, that is an internal issue. We need to argue. We need to, like, it's even ongoing in the committee. You know that there probably will be an audit of how elections went on. So that's more or less internal. But suffice it to say that we have democratic systems, even though they are manipulated, even though some people take advantage. The truth is, we have democratic systems, which then you can also use to stage up your case even internationally. You saw Martha Karua now go to East Africa Court of Justice.
Yes.
Whether she comes back with positive or negative answer, the truth is those are democratic institutions, and I think that is where we should focus on, that Kenya has well-established democratic institutions, and Americans should not be worried doing business in the country. They should be completely happy, and when there's a problem, they can always take it to the police or to the courts, and there will be an important decision. Yes.
And still on democracy and rule of law, I'm still stuck on the 49 missions, peace missions, which is quite commendable for Kenya as a country and actually a developing country, participating in 49 peace missions. And now we have the Haiti one. We are talking about democracy, rule of law. From where you sit as an advocate of the High Court, this, as Oscar has mentioned, this is quite a distinguished place, Jimmy Carter Presidential Library and Museum, where democracy, rule of law is the mainstream. But unfortunately, he has also mentioned the Haiti matter that is being also challenged in court after the High Court had talked about it. Where you sit as an advocate of the High Court, what are the optics in relation to such a democratic space that he was yesterday?
You see, Bontroy, every country is sovereign. And within the sovereignty of a nation, then we have these institutions, including the judiciary and all that. And once in a while, you might get a judicial officer who may not really quite be well informed in terms of certain international operations and certain dynamics in terms of political relations between countries. This is possible. But you see, that's why we have Magistrates Court, High Court, Court of Appeal, Supreme Court, and you can do repeat appeals in the Court of Appeal itself. So the matter is ongoing. The decision will come out. Once the decision has come out, then the minister in charge of constitutional affairs, who is the AG, and the executive then get to sit down and look at the judgment as it is. But if you talk about human rights and democracy, there's a request from you know, several quarters of the globe that Kenya should be engaged in assisting Haiti to restore its democracy. That request is honest, is genuine. In the case of Kenya, in 2007, for example, we cried out and we were assisted. You see, these other global nations, they come to us through Tanzania, through South Africa, through the Ethiopia. You know, they use the neighbors to try and say, please restore, you know, order and peace in your neighbor. And then they give a little bit of logistics, you know, finances and all that. And that's what's happening in Haiti. Haiti, I think that there are neighbors who want peace to exist in Haiti. But because of the nature of how the previous president was eliminated, I think that now there are, you know, bigger interests. And you cannot rule out that Kenya has an interest in Haiti. You cannot rule out that the United States has an interest in Haiti. They might coach their speech to mean that we want democracy, we want peace, but there are economic interests, you may say, there are development interests, and there are other interests of political nature, relatives living in that country. So the question of a country being requested to offer help is not strange. That we must agree. However, if you look at Ekuru Aukot's case, the issue then would be, what is the method you are using to send our troops to a foreign country? Is it the same method like the one we used to send our troops to, let's say, Somalia, you know, the Congo? And then the other question comes in. Why so far a country as Haiti, instead of focusing your energies in the African continent? You see,
yes.
Those are some of the smaller issues that can be dealt with. And I think that that is what the court will look at. But we must understand and appreciate the bigger sovereign nature of a nation. And if another country has contacted Nairobi for purposes of assisting them to bring peace and order, there must be, honestly, there must be a reason. I mean, you know, it is very easy to be contemptuous of your brother and your sister in the house. But when your brother or sister goes out there and becomes the head of state, then you are like, oh, you mean William Ruto, who is just our ordinary brother, has become a president? So Kenya should not hate itself so much. I mean, in terms of us citizens, we should not degrade ourselves so much as to imagine that we are nothing. By the virtue of the fact that a foreign powerful nation is requesting us to assist, bring peace and order, we should look at that first and foremost as a positive gesture globally. I mean, we are being given that status. Then now, in terms of the procedure for actually sending out those troops, we must follow the Constitution of Kenya, irrespective of the requests that have been sent to us. So if you ask me, because it's still in court,
Yes.
I would suggest that we will await the judgment of the court. But when the judgment comes out, by the way, it will be looked at again constitutionally with the AG and the executive and of course parliament, and then they will make a final decision whether to go back to court to seek allowance. Because Bentre, just before I finish, let me tell you, courts do not exist to block development. Courts do not exist to frustrate the executive or parliament. They simply exist to interpret the law and frankly say, this is the position of the country, we cannot send our troops to Haiti. That would be okay. But if they do not consider all those dynamics we are analyzing and then just come up and say, our constitution does not say we send our forces to Haiti, but we can send to the Democratic Republic of Congo, then of course they will be considered to be discriminative, and such judgments will be, will be analyzed properly once they are in place. Yes.
Oscar, you wanted to add something on that, but I wanted to ask in regards to the diaspora. Looking at during COVID-19, the diaspora remittances even hit 400 billion shillings. This is a block that we can never ignore. And when you talk about democracy, you can't talk about democracy without talking about elections. If we look at how the diaspora vote is more or less like carried out, it's not as, for example, I'm in Kenya. It's easy for me to elect anyone using my voter's card and my ID. But it's not the same for the diaspora. We cannot ignore them. They are pumping in a lot of billions which are supporting the economy.
I've never supported the diaspora voter because I have a feeling that local issues should be dealt by people who lead it. I know.
But at the end of the day, the 400 billion is
the 400
right here.
billion. The 400 billion is, you know, it's like telling me that the American government, or American government, influences our politics, and everybody else in the diaspora also influences our politics, but should not be based on the remittances. Yes, they should be able to influence, but the power, because people, if you travel from here to, for example, to live in Sweden, you know, if you live in America or in some of these diaspora countries, there are elections that you are, as a resident, you are allowed to participate in. You're not allowed to participate, for example, in the national elections, but you are allowed to vote in the local elections. For example, electing an MCA and electing a council representative where you live, because this one really affects your life down there. But people who live, for example, who live in the diaspora, for example, if they are given, it's a right that they should be able to be given. But these people have moved and they don't experience the same thing that we are experiencing down here. So it is important that in terms of elections, maybe they are given time, because they are Kenyans at the end of the day and they have a right. But I think they should be allowed to participate in some particular elections. For example, yes, they should be allowed to vote, for example, in the presidential election. But in the local election, in Alego, Songa, you know, people who live in America, they really don't know the problem down there. They cannot relate with them. They might have a way of, the way they think, you know. I have relatives who live abroad, and when they come here, most of the time, you realize they're completely out of touch with the local. They have solutions, but have solutions meant for America. For example, also, I mean, what I see probably in TV, when the president said the other day that France pays 25% of on tax, and 45, something like this. Even when we're doing benchmarking, don't benchmark in France, don't benchmark in Netherlands, don't benchmark in America, because there's nothing equal to what we are doing here. I think we should benchmark in Kigali, we should benchmark in Botswana, we should benchmark something which is similar to our situation. I mean, Singapore is not as far as, you know, Malaysia probably, but sometimes when we borrow too much from the diaspora, we can get confused, because if experts should bring it down and break it down to the local environment, like this is a good idea, but now put it for me to be able to be in our context, because our context, our environment, our dynamics are completely different from whatever is there. For example, even we will discuss about the finance bill. But this is what the benchmarking is all about, that we are doing it because somebody else is doing it there, doing this because somebody else is doing it. It might not work in our environment.
You don't think social media has opened up?
It has.
Social media has
so
opened
that they
up.
know whatever is happening.
For example,
And another thing, Council, if at all I'm working in the United States, I really want to know what is happening in my constituency in Runyenjes.
Yes,
and
but
at the end of the day, I will be sending a lot of money, and that money, I'm quite sure it's going to be...
Council, even for the purpose of social media has opened up that thinking, that opinion, but it has also interfered so much in policy-making processes, because we are never settled. Because sometimes we work on policy and there's something new in social media, so we want to do that and we want to do that. So we're always rushing to do many things as somebody else is doing it.
All right, and we're still going to go back to the diaspora, because I believe we should actually try and strengthen that block, because at the end of the day, it is bringing in a lot of money, which is helping out in the economy. Allow me now to also rope in Benjamin Wandalo, who is a communication and public relations expert. Karibu sana, and welcome
so much.
to the program.
So much.
Well, the head of state has already arrived in the United States. He arrived yesterday, actually. He has made his first speech, which was quite wow. That was, even Council has said that was a real good speech at the Jimmy Carter Presidential Library and Museum. He has touched on a number of things, including the democracy, climate change, and as a communication expert, the speech by the head of state, and especially on climate change, which is quite passionate about, bearing in mind that he is the one who organized the Africa Climate, he played a key role in organizing the Africa Climate Summit, and we are seeing some things. Council insists, or it's Omondi who says that indeed we should also press them hard, because now we are in the United States, which is one of the countries that has been mentioned as one of the countries that are contributing highly because of its industry and its economy to climate change. I would like to pick your mind on that.
First of all, allow me to register my apologies for coming late for the show. I've come to step in for my colleague Arnold, who unfortunately is under the weather. Also, I want to thank you so much for hosting us today and seek our views on these very touchy issues that encompass our country. Having said that, listening to what our head of state, the President Honorable William Ruto spoke in his speech, it's important for us to maybe just note his keen interests on matters climate change. The other day we had a national tree planting event, besides what you rightfully mentioned, the climate change summit that we also hosted in the country around a month and a half ago. So we have a president who is leading on the forefront. He is walking his talk, and he is very, very committed. As a country, you realize that we are really, really putting in measures to see if the country can go green. Green energy, we have had attempts to even introduce electric vehicles, electric bikes and so on, to just try and see if we can rein in and probably maybe reduce the effects of carbon emissions from motor vehicles. We have our institutionalized organizations in the country that monitor and make sure that even our industries use the proper channels to take care of their emissions and their wastes, so that in eventuality we would want to have a greener country, a cleaner atmosphere where we can all thrive. It might not be properly achieved in our generation, but at least for generations ahead of us, we want to live a country that will be greener, cleaner, and more freer to breathe in and live in.
Do you believe this is the right time to hold such countries as United States to account? We have witnessed adverse weather effects the last, couple of weeks. Last year we had the worst drought in 40 years. Is this the right moment to make a call by the head of state?
To be honest, it is always the right time. There is never a right time. Every time is the right time, especially when you want to start making reforms that speak to generations. You realize that as a country, we have postponed so many things. For example, we have sat on very many reports where we have people building and encroaching into riparian lands. We have buildings, we have a certain river that runs even behind our judicial headquarters. There's a river that runs through that, and City Hall headquarters and so on, and there's a whole report speaking to that. And every other year, we are told that this is a ticking time bomb. So just to respond to your question, it is never late to start doing the right thing. I think as a country, we have experienced firsthand the adverse effects of extreme weather. And I think we must start warming up and speaking up to it, so that we start living and working whatever it is that must be done in the spirit of correcting it.
Council, I know this is quite dear to your heart, what the head of state has just said about 46 judges in 1 year to ease the access of justice and also to promote, we can say, the rule of law. I'd like you to touch on that.
Yeah, I mean, you appreciate that we have come a long way in terms of how judicial officers are hired in the country. And you can see nowadays, you know, the interviews are online and like my brother said, I mean, even a diaspora sitting in Washington can actually see that there are interviews going on. And therefore they participate correctly. But besides that, you can also see that you even have a chance to comment whether you think the most competent were left out or the most competent were hired. And again, behind the scenes, that now leads to institutional manipulation. But in terms of whether they are democratic, they are. Then you can see also that the judiciary is also coming out to express transparency by conducting interviews and finish interviews in the morning on Monday. And in the late afternoon, they actually release the list of who has scored what. Now, of course, the Kenyan way, somebody will say, oh, we know they went behind the figures. You know, that again is a completely internal issue, which is neither here nor there. The truth is now we have a very strong judiciary, and I think the president has done well to actually keep his promise in terms of I will employ judges. Right from the 4 who had been left out by Uhuru Kenyatta, who then were sworn in immediately after the President Ruto was also sworn into office. So I think the landscape in terms of the judiciary, in terms of legal highway, fairness and what looks to be democratic, that we have scored a great deal. What now we need to do is enough country, in terms of human capital. Now we have a good judiciary, we have a good National Assembly, we have a few not very good guys who work in the executive, but at least the head of state has tried to pick what he considers the best. What then can we do? That's an internal matter, and I think when he comes back, he should focus on that so that he can, reshuffle his, ministers and PSS and try to put in place the most competent, the most passionate people. In fact, if you ask me, more passionate people, more than competent, will help him. People who are passionate about an idea will actually find a way, around it. But people are just there as elitists, but they have no interest, they don't have passion. They're the ones who are letting him down.
Very well. You're indeed watching News Check Live from the Broadcasting House, and I'm with my 3 panelists who are experts in their field. I have Ishmael Nyaribo, we have Oscar Omondi, and we have Benjamin Wandalo, who is our communication expert. And we are looking at the speech the head of state did make, the first speech, because as I look at his itinerary, he is going to be making a number of speeches in his 1-week tour of the United States, which is an official tour, the 3rd actually, for our Kenya sitting president. But don't go away, we'll be right back. Let's have a few minutes off, and then we will be back with this discussion. Don't forget, we'll also be looking at the finance bill. It has elicited quite some reactions, and we'll be touching on other issues that are also affecting the country. You're watching KBC. We'll be back.
Because I am not the woman who will make you happy. I'm not that woman.
That if someday you finally understand that the one and only way for you to be happy is to be with me. Because I do love you, Fabiola.
With that document in my hands, I can expose him and his crimes in front of his family and the community. People will know that Olegario Montoya has everything here because of lies.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. But you see, my husband refused.
Prepare yourself, because Olegario will know who you are. I am not kidding, Malena.
You have to give me time to finally convince Olegario.
Who are you talking to? And why convince my father?
Mpenzi mtazamaji wa runinga unayoipenda ya KBC Channel 1.
Over the years, we have been at the forefront of broadcast trends to bring you the best of news, entertainment,
how high-end are we speaking?
And sports. You have the power to take your favorite broadcaster to the top. KBC Channel 1 has been nominated in the TV Station of the Year category in the 7th edition of the Kuza ICT Awards.
Favorite TV station.
To vote for KBC via SMS, simply use the short code 15601 and follow the prompts at no cost. Or visit www.kuzaawards.co.ke and follow the registration instructions to vote. KBC Channel 1. Kenya's watching.
And where's she?
She is a he, and he is here.
What kind of a criminal do you think you are? A peddler?
Yeah, that's perfect, eh? Kinyanjui, the drug smuggler.
But Kinyanjui are a crook, and it is not the only one mistake. It is several. In fact, innumerable. Cynthia, that is the Lily Ngundu one. In you what?
Welcome back to KBC News Check. Just in case you joined us, we are looking at the state of the nation, and moments ago we just had an extract of yesterday's President William Ruto's speech at the Jimmy Carter Presidential Library and Museum, which was his first speech in his one-week working tour of the United States. And he has mentioned a number of things that we are trying to put into perspective with my panel of experts. And the first thing he said is that Kenya stands tall in democracy thanks to the likes of the former President of the United States, Jimmy Carter, and some of the lessons that we have been able to follow in regards to the first visit by Moi, which was back in 1980. The second one was by President Mwai Kibaki. It was in 2009, guys. Yes, 2009. No, 2003, because 2009, President Bush hosted Ghana's President John Kufuor. And because we're going to be looking at the current state of politics in the country, and also we are going to be touching on the finance bill, I would like us to wrap up on the presidential speech that he has made. He's also mentioned on a robust economy, and indeed, let's be very honest, US has several interests in the country which also help to boost the economy. Yesterday, the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics said that the economy has made some steps, 5.06% growth. I would like you to touch on that in regards to the president's speech.
I was listening on the economy of the president's speech.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you see the improvement of the growth of our economy is mostly statistics. And it doesn't really, people don't really feel that growth of the economy, really. And again, I think in the president's speech, he really didn't delve. That's why I told you that the first thing you look at, the podium at which the president is standing. He's talking about Jimmy Carter and all this, and about what is Jimmy Carter, and connecting it with what Kenya has improved in, and trying to connect the democratic position that Jimmy Carter stood for, what Jimmy Carter has been doing, and now what Kenya has emulated from this. And he's out trying to connect that one, which doesn't really go deep into the economy, although America and Kenya have tried doing a lot of things. You know, during Kibaki's time, we were looking east, or Kibaki or partly Uhuru were looking east and not so much in the west. But in the foreign policy around President William Ruto has been so much towards the west. I think the east has not been doing so well. So we are yet to also, we will connect, because you said he has many speeches. We will see exactly what he gets to sign and what economic impact this visit is going to make, which I don't think is the podium he was discussing on this. He was able to really get deep into what economic situation is going to deal with. Yeah, so I'm really looking at, if we come here maybe after 3-4 speeches, then I can be able to comfortably discuss and see where he's going to with whatever we're going to make out of this trip on the economic arena.
And Wandalo, allow me to build up from where Oscar has left in regards to our foreign policy, and we more or less seem to be leaning on the West as opposed to the previous regime, which seemed to be leaning a little bit more or heavily on the East, looking at the Chinese loans that we have, looking at the infrastructure that we are still constructing. The foreign policy that the head of state has adopted, and from what we see from the numerous trips that he has made, is indeed he is leaning a little bit more to the West.
Well, maybe before I fully respond to that, with your permission, allow me to also just maybe build a little bit on what my colleague Oscar was talking about in regard to the economy, and as to whether Kenyans really feel the effect of the economy. Maybe just to add to what he said, for us to appreciate whether the economy is growing or not, as you mentioned, Kebs mentioned that we are growing by 5.6%, it's important for Kenyans to take stock of where we got the country economically from and where we are. Chinua Achebe once said, like the lizard that fell from the roko tree, because there's nobody else to congratulate it. It told itself, well, I fell down and I didn't die. I'm tough. We found a country, when William Ruto came into power, of every 10 shillings the country was collecting as tax, around 7 shillings was going to pay debt. So as a country, we were remaining with around 3 shillings to handle recurrent expenses, to pay salaries, to do development, and any other projects that the country is undertaking. And you realize that that is the journey that this country has traveled. And out of that, in a span of 1 year, we are now on the 2nd year, we've seen a lot of things come up. We've seen price drops in basic commodities, be it maize flour, LPG gas, cooking oil, fuel, and so on. So you realize that we might not feel the direct impact of the changes.
Of the 5.06%?
Yes, because probably the average Kenyan wants to continue spending what he or she used to spend 5, 6, 7 years ago. But it's important for Kenyans to realize that the economy is never going to come down. The cost of life is never going to come down. It is us to scale ourselves up.
Oh, a lot of Kenyans will have a big issue.
I think before my brother... let me just put it into better perspective so, so that maybe Kenyans don't get me out of context.
Yes.
For example, when I was a child, a loaf of bread used to cost 5 shillings when I was a child. Today, the same loaf costs around 65 shillings. Okay? And we have no issues with it. Chances are that it could even go higher. At that time, when bread was costing 5 shillings, the life we were living, there were no mobile phones, there was no internet, our road connectivity was not as it is today, our technology was not as it is today. So for us to enjoy these amenities, the modern amenities that we enjoy today, and for us to keep abreast with our neighbors so that we are not left behind, these things that we enjoy, the fact that today you can access anything from the comfort of your living room or one touch of your phone, these amenities are run and operated using certain costs.
My payslip, it has not increased not even a single shillings in the last, I don't know, 5, 6 years. But the cost of... So how do I scale up there? I'm just giving an example as a Kenyan, because at the end of the day, I'm also as a Kenyan and I'm also reeling from the high economy.
Correct, very correct. As a Kenyan and as Kenyan as well, you realize that we can no longer be an economy where we rely on one job. Look at these other developed countries, where you find the same person, the same one person probably has a job here and also does another part-time job. When we want to catch up with our neighbors, when we want to keep abreast with the changing times, with the changing trends, with the demands that life brings today, we must also be cognizant of the fact that to maintain those things, it takes a certain resource to run the
job. Okay, let me see all the jobs that I do, other than being a news anchor here at KBC. The only other job I can do is agriculture. I have a few stems of mira at my place, a few bananas, a few maize and beans. But I'll not be able to work for another corporation or another entity because, of course, I'm tied here.
Pontre.
Yeah.
In honesty, growth in trade is not philosophical. It is statistical. It's numbers. Growth in economy equally, though it is carrying more than a trade aspect, it also shows, it reflects on people, you can see it in the country. For example, serious growth in economy will be robust. It will increase, more trade, and people will have a little bit more money than they had yesterday, and you will see more cars on the road, and you will see, more offices being opened by consultants. You will see not many of them want to go and share one small office. They will want to open up because there's money in the market.
Yes.
That is the bottom line. Any explanation that economy has grown is simply an indication that actually it has not grown. For example, my brother says when the Kenya Kwanza regime came to power, they found nothing. I agree with him for the sake of argument, because I don't know what that means really. So then they came in. Now today we are informed by government explainers like my brother that now we are not paying as much as we used to pay for the debts, isn't it? Yes, that's okay. So if you are paying 1,000 shillings every day to the IMF and other institutions, now you are paying 200 shillings, isn't it? It's simple. So you actually have 800 shillings that was a waste that now is an income. Therefore, what you are scooping from the exchequer, what you are picking from people in order to pay has reduced it drastically by 800 shillings because you are only paying 2. So in the second year, you've actually stabilized the economy. And that is the word that is out here, that now the economy has stabilized. There are several stages of the economy. Let me just explain them for the, in a layman language, not in economics. Indeed, would actually crucify me if you took this as an explanation of economy. But for people, there is state house economics. And executive and members of parliament and whoever is up at that level. And then there is the employed people economics. We call them the middle class. Then there is the ordinary hustler.
The Wanjiku.
What happens is once you have stopped paying IMF, the dent that the government found after Uhuru left, instead of the state house economy allowing that to trickle down to the working class people where your pay slip will increase, and then the hustler easily sells njugu karanga, and instead of getting 100 shillings in a day, he will get 500. They don't allow that, and that's why the problem is when you hear that the economy has stabilized, it has stabilized for that level of people. That's why now guys who are buying a suit for 15,000 shillings, they're wearing 600,000 suit. I mean, if I'm lying, you know. And the shoes is 300,000-400,000, and the watch. So a person is walking with 1.5 million on the street. If that person was only walking with 100 or 200,000, the economy will trickle down so that the hustler will actually sell njugu karanga and make about 1,000 shillings in a day. This is where the problem is. So when actually they say economy has stabilized, it simply means we are okay now, we are eating enough. But if they honestly left that to go down, the benefit of not having to pay IMF and other institutions so much money, so that benefit trickles down, then everyone in the country will be singing the name of their president. But now, that is not happening. And the president is not aware that the technocrats around him, I mean, honestly, you all know Ndi before he is what he is today. I mean, everyone had hope that, yes, he will offer the best advice. Shortly after they started giving elitist philosophical explanations about economy, you have to suffer. My friend, Kenyans, you can observe what happens in the United States. Kenyans are a serious workforce. They can actually work not 2, 3 to 4 jobs. They can do that. The problem with our country is even after you work for 3 jobs, nobody pays you. In the evening, you will still go home without money because the employer does not have ready money. He's waiting for the payment to come from some tender he did with the government, which will not pay in 10 years, and somebody will commit suicide. So when we are honest about our people and we want the people to grow, let us be honest about economic growth. If there is honest stabilization of the economy, let us not have so much tax. You can now see a new bill is actually suggesting that we will pay for everything. So you keep wondering then, okay, fine, let's pay the tax. Where is it going? Now my brother, through government, I believe, he's saying, tighten your belt. Don't, you are spending too much beyond your means, but we are giving you so much money. How are you planning it? How are you utilizing it? So that my mother, who gets 2,000 for being old, can now get 10,000 for being old, so that she can enjoy the prosperity of the economy of our country. I think this is where Kenyans are. You may not agree with me, but actually that is the mood of the country, and that's the
thing is, I like his argument, but I've always told you, myself, I'm a teacher, and when you teach, there are different students in this class. The understanding is different of phenomena that you're teaching, but you must bring everybody to par. So I understand the situation, but I like that discussion because this is how they understand it. That, Troy, your problem is that you're only doing one job. But go and do another job, right? And somebody says, when asked that guy for the chairman of the finance committee, says that we are raising the price of bread because bread causes diabetes. And we don't want people to get diabetes here. And the circulation, motor vehicle circulation tax, we're putting it, and if you think you don't want to pay it, it's like express road. If you don't want to pay for express road, go down there. If you don't want to pay motor vehicle circulation fee, then stop using your vehicle. The thing is, this is the understanding of things. It is a very simplistic way of addressing issues. And this is what my friend is doing. It's very simplistic. That we are in this, the price of things, life has gone, is now better. Because of what? Because of the price of foodstuffs have gone down. You know very well that when the dollar was raised, and we don't know what brought the dollar down. When the dollar was, you see the price of things go down because of the dollar. And now the dollar has been, something happened. And we are yet to get to know what really happened to bring the dollar down.
Let's give it time.
Let's give it time. But according to this report that was released yesterday by Kenya National Bureau of Standards, they said manufacturing is declining, right? 2023 financial, anyway, when you tell me to come and discuss finance bill 2024, I was like, Troy, have you finished discussing 2023? You see, is that slip you're talking about? Yes, is that slip that you're talking about, have you been deducted on the housing levy? It's starting in next month, I think so. Then
the housing levy continues.
It continues. Then we have shift.
Yeah.
Yes, these are going to be reflected. Let me tell you, Troy, if this one works, the finance bill 2024, come and let us talk here in August. It will not be, you will be deducted more than the legal amount. Because even loans.
My pay slip will be a little bit strangled.
Yes, will be a little bit strangled because, let me tell you, for example, like what they talk about the motor vehicle tax. Do you know people don't even understand it? If you have a vehicle that is worth 1 million shillings, they are saying 2.5% of the value. 2.5 of 1 million shillings is 25,000 shillings, for example, right? 25,000 shillings per month, per vehicle, not per month, per year. And you know all these matatus, they don't even pay valuation of those vehicles. You can't even value those vehicles because you can't have valuation. The thing you do is you have to spray this vehicle, let me go for vehicle inspection, pay for it. After vehicle inspection, go and value that vehicle. After valuing the vehicle, you pay for the valuer to value that vehicle. Then we say how much it costs. Then pay 2.5 of that. That means that it will be more than even the third party that they pay. Because third party for a small vehicle mostly costs 5,000 shillings.
Yeah.
It is not going to be that when you're paying for 5,000, if you've been paying 5,000 in your insurance, you will now be paying another 5,000 on top. No. They will be collecting 25,000 on top of 5,000, which is around 30,000. You see, the vehicles you're talking about are not on the roads. They're at home because we've never even recovered from the fuel prices that went up. People are using matatus. We used to have traffic jams here. They are not traffic jams. He's telling you that he's been called just to pick a, okay, it took a motorbike, but even the motorbikes are very expensive because there's people will tell you the price of fuel is still very high. And the cost is, the price of electricity is too high for the manufacturing sector to do anything. So even the growth you're talking about, for example, even on issue to do with education, the people who are getting into schools is increasing. The number of students getting into schools is increasing. It's going very high. The number of teachers in those classrooms are decreasing. This one is a very bad indicator. But people who advise government, who comes around governments, will always tell you that, okay, it's because of now we are getting internet, and it's because now the cost of things are gone up. People who are getting bread for blah, blah, blah. It is like what happened in, you know what caused the French Revolution 1789? Bread. See, they're introducing some tax on bread.
We even have a recent one.
Yes.
Because of bread in some country, I think a couple of years back.
Yes, and you're touching bread here, you know, and when the Queen asked, what is causing the revolution? Somebody told the Queen, it is because there's no bread in France. And the Queen asked, why don't they eat cake? He's telling us that. Troy, why don't you get another job?
All right, it's good. Let him respond to that because Benjamin.
Yes, Troy.
I think you must
I
be
will
careful.
get another
You
job.
must be
I'll look
careful.
for maybe a part-time job, right?
Yes,
But in Kenya and more or less East Africa, even to get a single job is an issue. Now you're telling me maybe I should get 2 or 3 jobs because, mark you, according to the finance bill, actually the finance, the budget policy statement that came out, bread, 10% on bike, beer and spirits also targeted. We are also, the taxes everywhere, batteries, car batteries, diapers. Even if I get another job, I'm still pressed.
Troy, maybe first of all allow me, with your permission and the permission of my colleagues, to recant probably a statement so that I make better sense.
Thank you.
And so that maybe that can inform how we shall maybe engage. When I say that maybe as Kenyans, and I'm not speaking as an outsider, I am Kenyan by every right, to get extra, actually the correct word should be, we should maybe think of an extra source of income. It doesn't necessarily have to be a job. So that we do not rely entirely on our pay slips or one salary, okay? Because one or another, the cost of life is going up. The demand for things, quality services is up. Today, if a road is bad, Kenyans will plant banana stems on that road. And therefore, government must make sure that we have good roads. These roads are maintained somehow by resources. To respond to what my brother said, so that we don't deviate so much, when I said that the government was collecting 10 shillings and in every 10 shillings, we were paying 7 shillings, okay? He alluded to the fact that now that we are paying less, I don't know if I got him correct, but he alluded to the fact that now that we are paying less,
we should have
then we should have more. I think we need to understand the psychology of money. We still have the debt. The debt has not gone away. We still owe. The debt was so pressing, it was more like we have borrowed from Shylock. And that's why we were choking as a country. Gentlemen, a country has 3 sources of income. The first major source for any country is taxes. That is the surest source of income for any nation, Kenya notwithstanding. The second source of income for a country is foreign exchange. Whatever it is we export, the money we get from exporting whatever it is we export, be it products, be it sport, be it labor, and probably whatever it is that is sent from diaspora by our relatives who are out there working and they send money back to the country. That is what we get as foreign exchange. And the third source of income for a country is the loans, the grants, and the aids that we get. By the time President William Ruto came into power, we were considered a bad borrower, okay? Because we had borrowed so heavily to the point where some of our national assets were on the verge of being auctioned by the lenders, okay? JKIA, Kenya Ports Authority, the Port of Mombasa in Mombasa, was on the verge of being taken by the lenders who had lent us money because we had reached a point where we were unable to pay. If I'm to give you a good allegory of this so that I make better sense, put ourselves in a situation where you have a family man who has children. He earns maybe a 5-figure salary, okay? He keeps his children in international schools. He's able to take his wife and family for holidays, okay? He lives on the first lane. But somehow, to sustain this life, this man takes loans to keep on impressing his lavish lifestyle. Then at some point, the banks catch up because you can only borrow as much, right? When the banks catch up, the first thing to auction are the vehicles because those are easy to movable assets. The next thing maybe is the house. And this man somehow convinces the banks and tells them, look here, I understand I have a loan, I'm ready to pay. Can we just renegotiate on the amount I'll be submitting because my payslip is choking. I have so many of these loans. So can we renegotiate? But I'm ready. So when they renegotiate, we can all agree this man and his household can no longer continue leading the same life they were leading. The children can no longer have bacon for breakfast. The children can no longer stay in international schools. They'll have to adjust and adapt, maybe go to Jamhuri Primary School, as long as they still just get education. He'll no longer live in Runda.
Is that what happened?
Okay. So, as a country, we had reached a point where we had borrowed so much to sustain the subsidies, the fuel subsidies that President Uhuru was subsidizing at that time when we had issues with fuel to stabilize. We were even subsidizing unga. We were borrowing to subsidize unga, okay? So when William came into power, he said, look here, we cannot borrow to continue consuming. If we must borrow, let us borrow to produce, okay? And that's when now we started having subsidized fertilizer moving all the way from 6,500 to 2,500 a bag. And in that, the ripple effect of that was that last year we had a bumper harvest. That is what brought unga prices down. As basic as it is to Mwalimu, but a hungry Kenyan is a Kenyan you cannot address. That one we all agree. As I finalize, we are having issues on taxation. Bread is a very touchy issue. It's important for us to interrogate, is this bread being taxed? What's happening on the bread? And it's a proposal in Parliament. It has already been there thrice, okay? What the proposal is that let us have what you call a tax rebate, because we've been having a tax rebate to the millers, whereby KRA collects taxes from the bread millers, but upon collection of those taxes, the bread millers are refunded that money. Kind of, they are subsidized to produce the bread they sell you, the Kenyan. You know, the government subsidizes the millers to produce bread that the same millers sell to Kenyans. So the proposal is, why would we subsidize you to produce something that you are selling to make profit? Why is it that now, if we collect this from you, the millers, this tax, we don't give it back to you? So that the cost of producing the bread, it is entirely left to you, okay? And then whatever it is we collect from you as government, we use it to continue running other things for the country. That is the proposal. And it is something that is being discussed.
Yeah, because unfortunately, because adding VAT or value-added tax on bread is going to bring the cost of bread up by 10 shillings. At least a minimum of 10 shillings.
Yes, yes.
At the end of the day, this is somebody who, we are still not out of the economic dungeon that COVID-19 and poor governance led us to. So the moment that you increase or you introduce tax, because it's zero rated now, you introduce value-added tax to bread, which is a staple food in the country. What does that lead to in terms of cost of living?
I was coming to that.
Okay.
The issue of taxation, which is the surest source of income for any government.
Yes.
And unfortunately for our country, courtesy of the few employed people, our tax base is still a bit narrow. And literally, the number of graduates we churn out from our public universities and every other institution is higher than the number of retirees compared every year. So we have more jobless Kenyans and more Kenyans who are still on job. Yet these Kenyans still need services, still need government services. The other day we had doctors on the streets asking for more pay. We have JSS teachers asking for permanent and pensionable terms. Somehow money has to be collected from somewhere. Government does not run business for profit. Government also just comes back and shifts the same cost to us because we must shoulder it. Unfortunately for now, as Kenyans, the few employed, the you, the Mwalimu, the us, are the ones shouldering the burden of the rest of millions of Kenyans who are unemployed. It is a heavy burden. And let me tell you, my brothers, taxes are never enjoyable. In any country, tax is never fun. It's not a punishment. It is a duty for any patriot in any country, because it is that tax that helps to run the country.
Troy, and in as much as it's a civic duty, is really, some taxes are really nagging Kenyans. Oscar, you wanted to add your weight on that. But still, just a minute, Oscar. I still will respond to that. I would also want us to look at one issue that we've really forgotten when you talk about the finance bill, the language. The language in two aspects. The first one, the bill is always published in English. Many Kenyans would prefer it in Swahili or even in vernacular languages. The second language I'm talking about is the language that I think it's Council who mentioned, or it's you who mentioned, the language that our leaders are using. If you cannot do A, then we can do big.
I will respond to that, but before you, I think you gave him a lot of time to do a lot of misinformation, which we need to correct. He explained very well, but this is a problem again of when people, the type of education that we have, people get drilled. So it is only the face value. He explains it very well, that somebody who was surviving on this bit, then was surviving on a loan, then now his kids were going to international schools. You remember that his explanation. What he didn't say, or what he doesn't know, what did we do to solve that mess that we were in? Because we were on ready loans when William Ruto was coming into power. The thing is, what William Ruto did, or what the president did, or what the Kenya Kwanza government did, not William Ruto, but the Kenya Kwanza, it's a decision of many people. They decided to go for an expensive Eurobond to help us solve the problem. So, my friend, what happened to this man who was taking his kids to international schools when the loans were too much? He decided to not take a cheaper loan from a SACCO, which he was surviving on. He decided to go and tell the SACCO that, you know what? Give me another loan, but this time charge me 18%. The other one was 10%. The other Eurobond was 10%. This one is 18%. Get me right? So it's even an expensive loan. What has that one created? By the time this regime was coming into power, the cost of borrowing was 16%. If you go to the bank, Troy, you will get a loan for 16%. Now the cost of domestic borrowing is 25%. It has gone so much. So the government is borrowing expensively at the domestic market, even more than what is borrowing at the international market. So we are in a bigger debt than we were in before. So the explanation is good, but what you need to know that what decisions were made to solve the mess of what he was explaining was that we went for a more expensive debt, and now the cost of borrowing, even at the local market, has gone so high. It is too expensive. Number 3, before I get to the language that you're talking about, issues to do with this taxation, over heaven's sake, if you get a chance to say it with anybody in government, Troy, in your show, tell these guys don't touch M-Pesa. M-Pesa has revolutionized our economy. It has made people who are not who are not able to bank to bank. That is the only account that we now left with. The only one that your grandmother in the village has. Only one account. People used to bank in banks. We were not able to afford them. Now the only thing we have as a bank is mobile banking and M-Pesa. If you touch that one, this economy will now die because we won't be able to transfer monies on M-Pesa. M-Pesa has, do you know M-Pesa is called M-Pesa in Romania? It is called M-Pesa in India.
Mobile banking.
It is called M-Pesa in Tanzania. They borrowed it because they come and saw what the economic revolution has made. Anybody who is going for anything, be it bring housing levy, bring shift, bring everything you want to bring. Leave M-Pesa to be what it is. You know what happens when M-Pesa goes down in this country. Everything comes to a standstill in the country. The Mamamboga down there, everybody can only survive on M-Pesa. They're threatening. It's a threat now.
All right.
That now we're going to M-Pesa.
With all fairness, they are still being, we still have the public participation. And
lastly, over language, just over the language.
But when you talk of M-Pesa, you also mean Airtel money.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying we just talk about
mobile banking. He did say mobile banking.
They haven't paid.
Mobile banking.
Gentlemen, they haven't paid us.
I was talking about the language.
We just use mobile banking.
Mobile banking. Sorry.
You're right.
The language.
Yeah.
Public participation.
Civic education.
And civic education. I think it is 7 days that are given for public participation. It's like, we will tell you that we are now debating so that when we have elections, the presidential election case, that it goes for 14 days other than, is it 14 days or 7 days?
It's 14 days it goes for.
14 days.
We are proposing
We are proposing that we make it even a whole month, right?
Yes.
What happens in public participation? The interest of the governors, the interest of people who are governing us is not for the public to participate in public engagement over this. People sit somewhere and make those decisions. They've decided not only now the Kenya Kwanza, even at the county level, Even the floods, in Nyando, people should be discussing on how they can move and get land somewhere on higher land so that the floods don't get them anymore by the county government. But the governor there goes with ideas that he had decided that I'm going to make a road, I'm going to make a clinic, then impose it on the people and make sure that the language is so technical, make sure that the time is so limited, make sure that we don't have a good regime where those things that are discussed in those public participation arenas are brought to book. Even the other one, what we call the Finance Bill 2023, you know, there were a lot of public participation around it. Give it 2 years. Nobody, no Kenyan will want to participate in those silly public participations because at the end of the day, they don't influence policy. Because at the end of the day, there's no system put in place that will make sure that what you discussed at the public participation arena was actually implemented. This one, 2024, I think it's decided whether public participation is done or not. It's going to be implemented.
And still on that, because Wakili, you are an advocate of the High Court, do we need more or less like a Public Participation Act? Because we do not have it. Public participation is enshrined somewhere, but we do not have an act that really guides us on this. The reason I'm talking about this is because we look at the civic education, we look at how these bills are printed. They are printed in English, you know, and the majority of Kenyans would like to see them either in Swahili or in their mother tongue. And the duration given, public participation for something that we're going to be using for the next 1 year is only 7 days. And let's just be very honest, the public participation for the Finance Bill 2023, a lot of the comments and suggestions by Kenyans were not factored in, housing levy being one of them. I would like you to touch on that.
Now, there's actually currently a notice to lawyers to give comments on the session of paper number 3 of 2023 on Kenya policy on public participation. So it's a matter going on. It's a notice that we have been requested to give comments and you know, state what you think is the law and what is not the law, what should be the practice. Then it will lead to enactment of an act of parliament to allow for public participation. So it's something in process. As it is, it's only judges through their judgments who have made decisions that a matter should go into public participation. It goes back to parliament. Parliament is saying, they said we go for public participation, so we will simply pick a certain section of society and you know, do advertisement on newspaper and say we have conducted a participation. So I think it's a young law. It is now growing, and I think people would be encouraged to give their opinion whether they should reach my mother in the grassroots or it should end up at some town halls where some elites have discussed, and then it's called public participation. But as it is, and you know, for your viewers, the truth of the matter is when you are enacting a new law, you must give people opportunity to give comments about it. So the question of giving people opportunity, as it happens today, it will trickle down to county level, then it goes to the sub-county level, then the chief is asked to do what? To call people into, you know, a place, and there is probably you know, a set template where they, you know, give their comments. Yeah, but Bontre, I don't know if you wanted, I also make a remark about, so where do we take the money we collect? Where do we take money? I mean, I think it's exciting, actually. It's quite, you know, it's pleasure if you collect a lot of money and you can see it. Now, the question is, what do you do with that money? And this is where I think we are challenging our own government. He said that once we have enough taxes, then, you know, the government can be enabled to conduct its activities. What I read from developed nations is that once you reach a certain age, like in Europe, you actually use the train free. Once you are considered as a senior citizen, I guess 70 plus, you just go into the train, you drop at your destination and come back free. As long as, of course, there are, I think, exempted hours like the rush hours, then you will have to pay. So what do we collect our money for? If it can be felt in our transport sector, you know, just the other day there was so much money that came into the country because of floods. How was it utilized? I think that is what Kenyans are asking. We are also worried that bread is going to be 16%. If all of a sudden you allow that anybody can fly to India, get a bakery, and we will not tax you for that. But you can pay VAT over here. We will not tax you. Why? Because the money you have given us already has enabled us to, set a good relationship with India, and therefore we are going. India has even given us subsidies on some imports. So, where do we take our money? This is actually what the Kenyans want to know.
Troy, can I respond to that?
What happens to schools? You see, even when you talk about international schools, by the way, international schools are not free molecules. I mean, they will set fees, but it will be benchmarked on what the country has set as fees, or what their, origin country has set as fees in their country, but it will definitely be benchmarked with what happens in the country. Therefore, where do we take our money? This is where Kenyans are crying. I think, according to me, I see a lot of it in the entourage on the roads, and the suits, and the small, designer shoes and all that. That's where our money is going. And buying pass, yeah, that's true. Choppers and all that. That's where a lot of the money is going, by the way. If I had to write a thesis about that, spend a bit of time and, research, you will find a lot of money being pilfered. It is not going to help schools. Why are we complaining that schools have not even gotten capitation 3-4 weeks after schools have opened? Because the money has been collected. It is in the central government. It is in the, exchequer. It should simply be directed to the schools. After 1 or 2 months, the minister will be saying no one should send the children home. And yet, the headmaster and principals cannot feed children from their personal accounts. I mean, money has to come from government. It is not coming, and the tax is high. The question, my brother, will be, and this is what Kenyans ask, fine, where are your subjects? You are now collecting a lot from us. Thank you. Where is it going? That is a very pregnant question that has never been answered, but I can see it on the streets and on the roads.
All right, let's hear from Wandalo.
If I may.
Still, while you're on it, in as much as we are finding ourselves taxing almost everything, don't you think it would be better to increase the tax bracket as opposed to raising taxes?
Thank you so much, Troy. To respond to Akili first, yes. Where the taxes are going. Last year, we had 56,000 teachers, new teachers employed by TSE. I think the highest in the history of our country. We have the digital superhighway. We have the Wi-Fi being set up in shopping centers for our young men to create content, the content creators and so on, so that they can earn from wherever they are. We have the Machakos Open University, where you can now even just go to school without necessarily having to step there physically. We have the fertilizer that went down. So there's so much that the taxes is doing. Okay.
I think you don't mention fertilizer.
No, we have to mention. Of course, we know this year we have had issues with the fertilizer, issues that we all are aware of. I don't think it is a deliberate thing by the government to have Kenyans get fake fertilizer. Yeah. This must be some rotten people in the country who wanted to take advantage of Kenyans' innocence and cash in quickly. But the intention of the government was to make sure that fertilizer is subsidized so that we have higher production. That is the sincere intention of the government, keeping every other factor constant of rogue Kenyans who want to take advantage of Kenyans. To respond also to the issue of public participation that my brother was saying here, and whether Kenyans' voices will be heard or not. Article 1 of our Constitution speaks to the sovereignty of the people, either directly or indirectly through elected leaders. So in the unlikely event that my brother feels that whatever it is Kenyans will say during public participation will not be heard, Kenyans have a second chance through established structures in government, in parliament, to adjudicate the matter. We have the numbers in the opposition side where they can adjudicate and say, this part of this bill is not agreeable, is not workable. They can interrogate it, okay? And say, we can do it this other way. What we see happening in our country, Troy, is that our opposition leaders have chosen to solve economic problems politically. We are politicizing our economic problems. An economic problem can only be solved economically. You say, okay, rather than saying we want to collect maybe this amount from bread, why can't you relook at this and try this other way to raise the same amount to do what you want to do? As to the issue, Wakili is saying that we see our taxes in expensive suits, we see our taxes in expensive shoes and so on.
True.
As long as, and in this country, our constitution has established autonomous bodies. We have EACC, we have the DCI. For as long as up to now, none of these bodies has truly said that this watch that Mwalimu has was bought from proceeds of corruption. We cannot say that Mwalimu bought an expensive watch by stealing from school where he works, you know? And these bodies, we've seen them charge leaders before. We have leaders in court. A classic case is a former governor with his wife who are still having a matter in court. I'm not allowed to discuss it here. But we know that we have bodies in this country that are empowered by our constitution to adjudicate, investigate, and put to book Kenyans who are misusing funds. So if tomorrow, Troy, I see you in an expensive suit, should I say you've stolen from KBC?
No.
For as long as it has not been proven by our bodies that these are proceeds of corruption, then let the eagle perch and let the hawk also perch.
Okay, just to respond, because he has touched something on what I said.
And still, let's also be objective, because at the end of the day, these are the taxes that have enabled us to more or less like stabilize the economy.
Yeah.
We give credit where it is due.
Yeah, we give credit to where it is. I think, first of all, I'm not a member of the opposition, so I don't know what...
I withdraw. Allow me to withdraw that. By all means.
I don't know what opposition does. I don't respect this particular parliament, because the worst thing that we did in our constitution, which has brought us a problem, is that people who control parliament sit out of parliament. The opposition are controlled by the leaders of parties, like leader of White House and leader of ODM, who don't sit in parliament. So before Honorable Wandai, and who is the majority leader, takes a decision there, they have to consult out of parliament. So they vote as along party lines. People don't put thinking into some of these things. The other side also, Kenya Kwanza, is led by the party leader, is the president, who doesn't sit in parliament, who sits in State House. So parliament cannot make its own decisions, because people who sit in parliament, who make decisions in parliament, sit out of parliament. So we've lost a parliament. Number two, what we are saying on issues to do with what Wakili is talking about. Wakili is saying that where does our money go to? The thing is, the issue that we have a problem with, that we cannot talk about collecting taxes and we don't talk about, that is revenue, collecting revenues, and we don't talk about expenditures, how we spend it. You have to do that. That is what you do. We have to manage expenditures, that we are not managing our expenditure. The way we are managing our expenditure is completely sick, because what you see is probably, if you see the budget come from the Deputy President's office, the renovation of that office, I mean, that office looks good. You don't need to have 1.4 billion to renovate it. Same to renovation of State House and these jets and all what have you. Because we are talking as a people. The only thing is that when you talk about science, you are talking as a member of the opposition. That's why I told him, I'm an expert in my field. I'm a political analyst. I don't belong to the opposition. I don't even agree on what they say. Some of the things that we are saying, in that report that Kenya National Bureau of Standards said, they said that... The statistics. They said that manufacturing is declining. If you want to create wealth of a nation, go manufacturing. If you can manufacture here, then you don't have even to import a lot. So we have to build that. We need tax incentives so that many people can invest in manufacturing. But another thing also, in that report, purchase of cement has gone down. That means that there's no construction going up. And you know we have this construction of this housing levy going on. We expected now to be, and the president told us that the people who are manufacturing cement will go, they will have business, but it's gone down. Crime has gone up. Why is crime going up? Because of the situation that our people are finding themselves in. So some of these things are things, what he's saying, that where do we spend the money? Bought Wi-Fi. You know, like this is so embarrassing. Machakos Open University. I teach at the university. Why do we invest in an open university? It's because students are taught online, to make it even cheaper, to make even the cost go down, so that when Troy sits in Meru, he doesn't have to travel all the way and rent a house in Nairobi and use transport to be able to go into a physical class. So that is why they are investing in online classes. Kenyatta University has launched it now, and they're doing it free. You know, people are doing free. Online courses should be actually free. So you can't tell me that we've brought Wi-Fi to centers and we brought Open University and this is where the money goes to. The money that is being collected is a lot. We should be able to invest in making sure that, for example, the Juakali sector, we should invest in Juakali sector so that many people can join to do some work, be able to work so that the tax bracket, and all that's what you're asking, other than raising tax, we increase the people. And how do we increase the tax bracket? Manufacturing, Juakali, let other people have a lot of skills that are good for our environment, so that many people are at work and many people can pay those taxes. But you reduce but collecting taxes and holding it up there, and now what Wakili says, buying expensive suits, and it doesn't gonna help us at the end of the day.
All right. Gentlemen, my director informs me that we are out of time, but I'm going to give you a minute each to wrap up this conversation, and especially on taxes and the finance bill.
Okay. Thank you. I'm not against suits, bond trade. I think people should be decent and enjoy their life. It's a part of what makes people happy, and therefore positive mental attitude and mental health goes high. But I think that whenever the nation decides to collect and recover so much money from the market, it should be put into the right use so that citizens can feel it, apart from international partners recommending us and commending us and saying we have done well. The citizens should be able to commend the current, the power, the government that is in place at any particular time. Having said that, I believe that, Kenya Kwanza has actually stabilized. Like my brother said, there are a bit of rotten elements who are taking advantage, and that happens in all societies. But I think they should do better in terms of making sure that everything is harnessed towards benefiting the citizens.
Two things. One, you asked on probably what the government is doing to expand the tax base.
Yes.
I was coming to it. One example is like the affordable housing, where you realize that through this project, where Kenyans are paying the housing levy, we have more Kenyans being taken up, the masons, the architects, the quantity surveyors, the landscapers, name it, even Mama Gideri who goes to sell to the people working there, the suppliers, and so on. So this in itself is one of the things the government is doing to expand the tax base. I mentioned 56,000 teachers who were employed by TSC. This year, the government intends to add 20,000 more teachers to TSC to not only just cover the deficit of the teacher-pupil ratio, but also expand the tax base so that we have more taxable Kenyans. Because Mama Mboga pale sokoni, there is no structure in which government can extract tax directly from her. But if you have more people on the taxable then it becomes easy for government to collect. Lastly, my brothers are mentioning about extravagance. I want us to be open-minded and look broadly at extravagance. It's a culture that has been in our country. It didn't start with President William Ruto. In our country, we have Kenyans who believe in making money and not earning money. That has been our culture. Yeah. We want to make money and not earn money. You know, cut a deal quickly, make my loot, go away. That is our culture. It cannot be changed by a government that is 2 years old. Right. It takes time to transform. Sure. And in that culture, speak also to county governments. Speak also to members of parliament. We have county governors who, we even had the other day a report saying that county governors are paying an opposition leader 2 million shillings per month to sustain an opposition leader. From which voted?
All right. Because
of the time, I'll finish. Yes, what I will say that it's good. The other thing about finance bill, we've discussed it. Limuru 1, Limuru 2, and Limuru 3. All wrong ideas.
Yeah, let's Thank you. My direct informs we really need to go. But I've been engaging, beginning from my immediate left, we have Ishmael Nyaribo, an advocate of the High Court, and also a governance and public policy analyst. We have Oscar Omondi, a university don, and also a political scientist. Next to him, last but not least, Benjamin Wandalo, who is communication specialist. Thank you indeed so much, gentlemen. Thank you so much, viewers, for watching. My name is Ben Troy. Brian Muraru has been assigned as the interpreter for this live newscast. On behalf of everyone who has made this a success, thank you.
Is artificial intelligence taking away our jobs, or does it actually create new and improved opportunities for work? And is there a way to protect yourself from the competition that AI creates and work hand in hand with it? All this and